They made me work while siblings partied, then begged me to bail them out at Christmas. The first thing I noticed was the way my mom wouldn't meet my eyes when she opened the door. The porch light threw a soft yellow circle over her face, and she smiled too wide, too fast, like she was already apologizing without saying it. Behind her, I could hear my siblings' voices, laughing, then abruptly going quiet, like someone had flicked a switch the second my tires crunched on the driveway. I stepped inside with my arms full of gifts, cold air still clinging to my coat, and the smell of cinnamon and ham hit me so hard it made my stomach twist. "Hey," I said, trying to sound normal. My brother, Dylan, was leaning against the hallway wall in his nice sweater, looking freshly showered and weirdly tense. My sister, Brooke, sat on the couch with her legs tucked under her, holding a mug with both hands like she needed something to grip. My dad stood by the tree pretending to straighten an ornament that didn't need straightening. And then Dylan cleared his throat and said, "Soph, can we talk for a second? Like, privately?" I didn't even get my boots off before the pressure started. Mom's hand hovered near my elbow, like she was going to guide me somewhere. Brooke's eyes were shiny, but not in a "I'm sorry" way, in a "please do what we need" way. Dylan tried a half smile, the one he used when he wanted something and thought charm would do the heavy lifting. I set the gifts down slowly, one by one, because my arms were shaking a little, and I didn't want them to notice. "About what?" I asked. My voice sounded flat to my own ears. Dad finally turned from the tree and said, too casually, "Just family stuff. Let's sit." And when he said family stuff, Brooke let out this small breath like relief, like I'd already agreed. That's when it clicked. This wasn't a conversation. This was a plan they'd built without me, and were about to hand me like an invoice. It was Christmas Eve, and I'd just finished a 10-hour shift at the hospital before driving 2 hours to my parents' house with a lukewarm coffee in the cup holder and my shoulders aching from tension I hadn't let myself feel all week. I'd told my charge nurse I couldn't stay late because family, and she'd given me that sympathetic look people give when they think you're going home to something warm. I'd pictured the usual awkward small talk, too much food, Dylan making jokes at my expense, Brooke scrolling through her phone, Mom fussing over everyone's plates. Annoying but familiar. What I didn't picture was walking into a living room that felt like a staged intervention where the problem wasn't addiction or betrayal, it was me having a savings account. To understand why this hit like a slap, you have to understand the role I've been shoved into since I was 15. I'm the oldest. I'm 29 now. Dylan is 27. Brooke is 25. Our parents aren't monsters. They're hardworking, middle-class people who believed in pulling your weight. The problem was that pulling your weight became something my siblings did when it was convenient, and something I did because the family couldn't function otherwise. When I was in high school, my dad's hours got cut for a while. My mom picked up extra shifts at her job, and suddenly the house ran on this constant low-grade panic about bills. Dylan and Brooke were younger, and everyone treated them like they were fragile little birds who needed protection from stress. I was the one who got told, "You're mature, sophomore. You understand." So I got a job. Then another. I worked evenings at a grocery store and weekends at my aunt's cafe. I missed football games and sleepovers because someone had to cover groceries. Dylan got to focus on school. Brooke got to enjoy being a kid. I told myself it was temporary. Then it became normal. Even when my parents' finances stabilized, the expectations stayed glued to me. If there was a shortfall, I covered it. If someone needed a ride, I did it. If Dylan forgot his lunch money, I transferred it. If Brooke wanted a dress for formal, I loaned her cash she never paid back. It wasn't demanded with cruelty. It was asked with this soft assumption that I'd say yes because I always had. Meanwhile, my siblings lived like the world had a cushion underneath them. Dylan partied through college. Brooke bounced between degrees like they were outfits. They always had money for festivals and weekend trips and fancy drinks, but somehow never had money for rent. Every time they got into trouble, my parents would sigh and say, "They're young," and then look at me like, "You'll help, right?" I tried to set boundaries a few times. It never went well. Mom would get watery-eyed. Dad would go quiet and disappointed. Dylan would call me stingy. Brooke would say, "Must be nice to be perfect." And I'd back down because I hated being the reason the house felt tense. Then I became a nurse. I started working nights. I started seeing how quickly life can go sideways. I started taking money seriously. I built a small emergency fund. I didn't tell my family how much I had because I'd learned that information became a target. Which brings us back to that living room on Christmas Eve. Dad sat in his recliner and patted the armrest like I was a kid called into the principal's office.
"Sit," he said.
I sat on the edge of the couch, coat still on, because something in me refused to settle in. Brooke's knee bounced. Dylan kept rubbing his palms on his jeans like his hands were sweaty. Mom stood behind the couch, hovering. Dylan started. "Okay,
So,
this is going to sound bad." He chuckled nervously like he could make it lighter. "But it's fixable. We just need—" Brooke cut in, voice thin. "We need help." I waited. Let them say it plainly. Dad cleared his throat. "They've gotten themselves into a situation," he said. "What situation?"
I asked.
Mom finally spoke, and her voice had that strained kindness she uses when she's trying to steer me. "Sweetheart, before you get upset, it's Christmas. We're all stressed. Let's just—" "Tell me," I said. Brooke set her mug down with a clink. I have some credit card debt," she admitted. Her eyes flicked up to mine, then away. It got out of hand. Dylan jumped in quickly, like he didn't want her to look worse than him. "And I had a business thing," he said. "A small investment. It didn't pan out." I stared at them. "How much?" Silence. Dad looked at Mom. Mom looked at the floor. Dylan's mouth opened, then closed. Brooke swallowed hard. "How much?" I repeated, slower. Brooke whispered, 27. 2,700? I asked because my brain refused to go where her voice implied. Brooke shook her head, barely. 1,000. My stomach dropped so sharply I felt dizzy. And Dylan exhaled like he'd been holding his breath for days. 42, he said. I blinked. The tree lights blurred slightly. "You're telling me," I said, voice very calm in a way that scared me, "that between you two, you need almost $70,000. "It's not like that," Mom said quickly. "Some of it is." "Interest," Brooke blurted, almost angry, like the interest was personally attacking her. It just kept growing. Dylan leaned forward, eyes shiny now, switching into performance mode. "Soft, look. I know we've messed up. I know. But if we don't pay it down this week, they're going to—" He glanced at Dad. "They're going to come after Dad because he co-signed." My head snapped toward Dad. "You co-signed?" I asked, and my voice finally cracked. Dad's jaw tightened. "I didn't think it would get this far," he said. My hands went numb. The room felt too warm, too bright. "So this isn't just them begging," I said. "This is you all deciding on the solution." Mom reached out and touched my shoulder like she could physically soften my reaction. "We wouldn't ask if we had another option," she said.
Ich zerrte her.
"You have options.
Sell something.
Negotiate. File something. They can get second jobs. They can—" Dylan cut in sharp. "I do have a job." "A job that pays for your weekend trips?" I heard myself say before I could stop it. My voice wasn't loud, but it sliced through the room. Brooke's face flushed. "That's not fair." "Isn't it?" I asked. I looked from Brooke to Dylan. "I worked through high school. I worked through college. I worked nights while you were posting photos at bars. I've been helping since I was a teenager. And now you're sitting here asking me for $70,000 on Christmas Eve." Dylan's eyes narrowed, defensive. "You're acting like we did this to you." "You didn't do it to me," I said. "You just assumed I'd absorb it. Like always." Dad finally spoke, voice low and firm, the way he uses it when he expects obedience. "Sophie, they're your siblings." I laughed once, small and bitter. "And I'm your daughter," I said. "The one you made work while they partied." Mom's face crumpled. "We didn't make you." "You did," I said, and my hands were shaking now. Maybe not with words, but with expectation, with guilt, with treating my maturity like a resource you could spend. Brooke's eyes filled, but her voice went hard. So, you're just going to let us drown? I looked at her and felt something settle. Not rage, not cruelty, just a boundary forming like a wall. I'm not going to drown with you, I said. Dylan leaned forward, urgent. Soft, please. If we can just get through this, I swear I'll pay you back. I stared at him. When? I asked. After your next investment? After Brooke's next emergency? After Dad signs something else, and Mom cries, and I'm the only one with a credit score that isn't on fire. Dad stood up, the chair creaking, and for a second I thought he might yell. Instead, he looked tired. We're asking for family, he said. I nodded slowly. Okay, I said. Here's what family looks like from my side. I reached into my bag and pulled out a small envelope. Not a dramatic reveal, just a plain envelope I'd brought because I'd been planning to give my parents a gift card for groceries. I set it on the coffee table between us. Mom blinked. What's that? My Christmas gift, I said. For you. Dad frowned. Sophie. Open it, I said. Mom did. Inside was a card and a printed page. Her eyes moved across it, and her face shifted from confusion to shock. Dad grabbed it from her hand and read. His eyebrows lifted. It was a letter from my bank confirming something very simple. I'd paid off the last bit of the small personal loan my parents took years ago, the one Dad always insisted wasn't my problem, even though I'd been sending them money toward it for 2 years. The confirmation showed the balance was 0. The account was closed. I did that, I said quietly, because I wanted you to be safe. Because I love you. Mom's mouth trembled. Sophie. And now, I continued, voice steady, I'm done funding anyone else's choices. Dylan stared at me like I'd tricked him. So you did have money, he said, accusation thick in his voice. I looked at him. I have a life, I corrected. One I built while you were busy. Brooke's voice rose. So, you can help, you just don't want to. I shook my head. Helping isn't handing over $70,000 because you don't want consequences. Helping is telling you the truth. You need a plan that doesn't include me. Dad's face hardened. If you walk out right now. I'm not walking out, I said softly. I'm stepping out of the role you assigned me. Mom started crying, quietly, the kind of crying that makes everyone else feel like the villain. I hated that it still tugged at me. I stood up anyway because if I sat back down, I'd cave. I'll help you find a financial counselor, I said, looking at Brooke. I'll help you call the lender and negotiate, I said to Dylan. I'll help you make a budget, sell stuff, get second jobs, whatever. But I'm not paying this. Dylan's voice went cold. So, you're choosing money over family. I stared at him. No, I said. I'm choosing myself for the first time. I left. I drove back to my apartment with my hands tight on the wheel and my throat burning. I cried exactly once at a red light, wiped my face, and kept going. My phone buzzed with texts. Mom begging me to come back, Dylan calling me selfish, Brooke saying she can't believe me. I didn't answer. Not that night. The next morning, Mom texted me a photo of the grocery store gift card still on the table, untouched. Under it she wrote, "We'll figure it out." 2 weeks later they did. Not gracefully. Dylan sold his truck and moved into a cheaper place. Brooke picked up extra shifts and finally admitted to her friends she couldn't afford their lifestyle. Dad stopped co-signing things. Mom stopped trying to smooth everything over with me. It wasn't a miracle turnaround. It was messy. There were angry calls. There were guilt trips. But the world didn't end because I said no. And the weirdest part? Once I wasn't the safety net, they all had to become adults. I still love my family. I'm still the one who brings soup when someone is sick. I'm still the one who remembers birthdays. But I'm not the one who pays for other people's denial anymore. Thanks for watching. If you've ever been the responsible one in your family and got treated like a bailout fund, share your story in the comments. I'd genuinely love to hear it.